Hey guys, what's up? Welcome once again to the Breakfast Club. And this morning I am your host serving up this morning's hot breakfast, which is probably going to be oatmeal. I go by the name Sword Sage on YouTube. And today we're going to be touching on a topic that I briefly mentioned in my last video. And it's something that I think deserves to be gone into with a little bit more depth. That topic, if you had not already guessed from looking at the title, was it up or is it below? I can never remember anymore. YouTube's changed so much. Um, Basically, it's on the fact that I had mentioned that we are now in an interesting period of human history where so much of what we've defined as what it is to be human in our current civilization is pretty much in upheaval. There's so much that we're redefining and so much that we are discovering about ourselves and about our ethics and morality that there should be and there is the beginnings of a general conversation within humanity itself on trying to redefine what it means to be human, what our rights should be, what our ethics should be, how we should go about our lives, how we should view each other, and so on and so forth. Now, it may seem to some that, well, this is the same conversation we've been having for centuries, but I think that it's a little bit deeper than that. I'm thinking that there's a lot more going on than just hashing over the same old questions that we've done before, like what is happiness, um, why am I here, that sort of thing. Now, this is a little bit more concrete than that. To try to explain what I'm talking about, I need to touch on why I'm thinking it's happening right now and how it ties into so much of the upheaval that we're seeing today. There are certain points in human history that, if you look at them, you realize that there were major turning points in how we went about our lives. Like, basically, how we formed our societies and how we thought those societies should function. Now, I'm going to be speaking in very general terms here. One, because if I'm going to try to go into specifics, this is going to be an extremely long video, and I don't want this to be as long as the last one. And two, I think it'll be a little bit easier for me to get my point across if I stick with the generalities. Though, of course, I understand that there are certain specifics that are important. But there are these like moments that you can see with certain civilizations where you can see that this is like a major turning point that leads to a shift in how that society functions and the prime values that that society happens to hold dear to. If we're going to look at what's generally called Western society and Western civilization, and particularly how Europe developed, there is one major event that I personally believe caused a whole lot of radical changes. And that event was the advent of the printing press. Now, the reason why I think this is because before that time, when, the so called Dark Ages, when it was under its feudal system, there was a clear line between the haves and the have nots and who had power and who didn't. And those in power tended to be in power because of the notion of, well, they deserve to be in power. It's their right. It's their birthright. You had the whole concept of the divine right of kings, or the fact that, well, if you're a noble and you deserve to have a piece of that power, or maybe even the throne. That's guaranteed to them. If you are not among those people, if you were not chosen by God or chosen by Providence or whatever, well, that's your lot. If you are a peasant, you are a peasant. That's it. That, and you are powerless. Your duty is to be as good a peasant as you can be under the system. And knowledge and education was also strictly limited to those who had means to it. And those usually tended to be the people in power. Again, I'm speaking in general terms here, but those in power, whether it be the nobility or even the church, had access to things that other people didn't have access to. Had certain works, books, scientific discoveries of the time. These are things that they had and they accessed and worked with, and those who were lucky enough to be educated by these groups, who could get in, with these groups, could take advantage of this, and understand the benefits of things like being able to read and write and to, you know, discover philosophies that have been, talked about and debated, in different cultures. And especially in Europe, you were picking up, you were able, if you were within the right circles, you were even able to glean knowledge from other cultures. Like, especially when during, when you have dealing with the Crusades and such, yeah, we can talk about the atrocities that happened then, but you can also talk about the trade of information going back and forth. Discovering what, the people in the East knew and what they were developing. And these things trickled into Europe and helped to flourish that society, that culture. They were able to take advantage of those things. It helped to enhance their sciences. It helped to, make them, develop further their own philosophies on life. But this stayed within a certain circle, within a certain group. Then the printing press popped up. And suddenly these ideas are being circulated among a greater group of people. And it's interesting if you look at when the printing press popped up and then you start looking at, relatively speaking here, because, we're still dealing with, several centuries afterwards, but you can see a sudden rapid shift in how things are starting to get shaken up in that society. You start seeing notions of, why is that guy king? What makes him king? Why the hell should we listen to this guy? Why this sole person? Why can't we have a group of people to keep him in check? You start seeing rumblings in the church. What do these fools think they are, thinking that they can decide what God's word is? And I'm generalizing like crazy here because I'm running out of time. But if you start looking at how history developed from that point on, you start seeing a lot of radical ideas, start popping up pretty quick. Not just in philosophy, not just in concepts of governance and your place in society. You start seeing rapid advances in science. You start seeing, rapid advances in philosophy. All these things are starting to pop up. Now all of a sudden you got a parliament that's along with the king to help decide how the nation should go. You start seeing a certain member of the clergy nailing, we'll just say for the myth of him nailing his stuff on the church door, and Protestantism was born. All these things popping up, which in many ways accumulated up to what I consider one of the most radical incidences in world history, the American Revolution. To me, that was a big deal, not just because, it created America, but think before these guys declared their independence, you were still dealing with people who were claiming that, I'm king, and that's it. I mean, yeah, the ground is shifting all around them. You got a parliament now that you needed to work with. You got more and more people declaring themselves to be free thinkers and free men. You got a merchant class developing. You got a middle class developing now. Not many people are being locked into peasantry anymore, but you're still holding on to the fucking I'm king, damn it. I'm king. God says there's supposed to be a king and I'm king. And then these people in colonies that you think you control are basically saying, who the fuck makes you think you're going to be in charge? Why? God put you up there? The only reason why you got power is because we gave it to you. We could take it away anytime we fucking feel like. That's a big deal. That's a major shift in perception of how society should be run. From power coming down on high to, we give you that power. We can take it away anytime we want. That's a big deal. That's a major shift. This is now talking about the powers of the people themselves. Their individual power with it and how it can combine within that society to dictate who gets to govern over them. It's part of the reason why they considered this particular republic an experiment. It was like a domino effect. The Americans got their revolution, then you see the French having their revolution, and then later on you see the Russian having their revolution, though they kind of messed that up, but that's a topic for another time. Even the French Revolution, they messed that up. But the point, I hope you see what I'm getting at. There are these major shifts in ideas that lead to a complete upheaval in society and how we see our place within it and how it should be run. Now, I bring all that up as hastily and as clumsily as I can in the amount of time that I did, and I apologize for that, to bring up now. There's a lot being redefined right now, isn't there? everything from gender identity to minority rights. So we've been arguing that since the 60s, but it's still going on because we don't want to face that particular topic because it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to talk about. Our supposed environmental responsibility on this planet. That's something that's being thrown in upheaval because, you know, you're dealing with old religious ideas of everything is always provided for us no matter what, and having to face the reality that, no, you're living on a finite planet with finite resources. You gotta keep that in mind when you're trying to put on an economy that believes in limitless growth. It doesn't work. That's being thrown into upheaval. We're having to face some uncomfortable truths about how our supposed democracy runs. What does it really mean to be a citizen of a republic, especially a republic that many people who live within it believe has been bought and sold? All this stuff, and there's many other topics that I haven't even brought up that I'm pretty sure any one of you guys can just throw on the table. Any one of you, every one of you has something that you can throw on the table that is right now being questioned. And that's very important. That's a big deal. I think part of the reason why we're having this shift right now, this big, you know, this shakeup, so to speak, part of it is because of the internet. Yes, we live in modern times. And yes, before the internet, we were still living in a, you know, decently, you know, running global communications thing where ideas were being shared pretty quickly, fairly quickly, but it was still within certain spheres. Certain ideas were only being shared among certain groups of people. Certain people were not exposed to certain ideas. And I know this to be true because I've been online since 95. And I still remember the shock that religious people had upon engaging atheists for the first time. Some of you guys watching this channel and some of you guys who are part of the Breakfast Club know exactly what I'm talking about. When they realized that that bubble, that religious bubble they were in, was not bulletproof. That the ideas that they believed in so strongly were not airtight. And there were people out there who can destroy their arguments very easily. They never encountered these people before. They never knew these ideas were out there. They had no freaking concept of, you know, logical fallacy. They had no idea what a circular argument was. They had no clue. Because they were living in a society that did not even engage those ideas. It's interesting how, for as modern as we say America is and how powerful it is, how isolated a lot of the states and a lot of towns in America can be, and still are in many ways. And having to suddenly be exposed to this more cosmopolitan worldview, to be exposed to a more logical worldview, and I say logical with quotes around it. That's a topic for another time. It shook them up, and they're still dealing with. They're still trying to wrap their brains around it. It's funny seeing people who have not engaged in these ideas before are quickly trying to grab these concepts that have been tossed at them, and not trying to use them as weapons. But it's like somebody trying to wear clothes that don't fit them. It's one thing to adopt the phrases that were being used, but it's another thing to truly understand them, and to take the time to sit and understand these concepts means having to completely shake up your own worldview. It basically means like just taking that cup of stuff that you've been enjoying and just dumping it out. And then having to like pick apart the mess you just made and figure out what's what with it. Maybe not that was the best analogy, but I think you get the point. And I just picked the religious thing as an example because I think that was you could clearly see the shakeup going on there when they get online and suddenly they're directly connected, as directly as they can, to people who had completely different ideas than they did. And then suddenly having to be exposed to a world they did not know existed. And this is not just happening on this whole religion atheist front. This is happening on all fronts in so many different ideas. And what we are thinking about our society is basically being thrown into question whether you like it or not. Now, the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because I believe that there are some people who are prepared to have this conversation, and there are people who are not. I kind of went a bit into it in my last video. But here's something that I didn't mention that I think is very important. Just because there are some people who I feel are not prepared to engage in this discussion doesn't mean that they shouldn't be allowed to engage in this discussion. And this is why I said before that I think it's a disservice to play around with people's ideas just for your own gain. Because ultimately, what's going to happen in society is going to affect everyone in it, whether they realize it or not. They should, as members of the republic that they're in, be knowledgeable about how that republic is being affected by the major changes that are going on around and within it. Everyone in this particular society should have a seat at the table of discussion as to where we go from here. And to be denied the tools needed to have that discussion is a freaking crime. I am not one of those people that's, wants to walk around with a bit of smug superiority about how, oh, well, I know about this and that and that and this, and these people don't know shit about. No, that's something that should not be celebrated. There are livelihoods on the line. There are families that need to be fed. There should never be a group of people in a society that somehow have access to information and be able to talk, deeply about the major changes within their society, and then a group of people who have no freaking clue what the hell is going on, and worse, or being set up as cannon fodder to be knocked down in the fight between the citizens while those in power continue to do whatever the hell they want just for their own gain. That is freaking abominable. It burns me up thinking about it. I don't care who you are in the society or what your political view is or what your ideology is. You know something that's important that can be brought to this discussion on where our society should go on any particular topic. I mean, there may be certain things that you don't really know much about. There's a lot that I don't know about, a whole lot that I don't know about. But there's some things that I do know about, or at least think about, and it's part of the reason why I like having these sort of, philosophical discussions with other people and where they think things should go or where they think things are going and what we can do about it or what we can't do about it. Everybody's got an idea about something. If you hunt, you have an idea on how the environment has changed, if it's changed at all, how important that is to our society and the ecology of that society, the values it teaches to people who engage in that. That is important. If you live in a city and you see the clear delineation between those who have money in that city and those who don't, you have something to say about inequality and how strong it is or how weak it is. Your own perceptions, even if they are wrong, still at least deserve to be brought up, because if somebody else can correct you, then they can correct you, and if you're open-minded enough to realize it's correcting, that is progress. And everybody can correct anybody. This has gone on longer than I wanted it to be, but that's what I wanted to touch on. The fact that right now I think we are in a very important period in history. All the fighting going on, atheist, religious people, men versus women, feminists versus MRA, right versus left, all this, that things are heating up like crazy, and the reason why things are heating up like crazy is because so much is being questioned. The internet kind of helped with that, because all these ideas are now being circulated among groups that never encountered them before, and it's making you having to second guess what you thought was true. That's a good thing. As long as you can keep your passions down, your temper down, and be willing to discuss this. Because when we can get past that, and all of us can discuss where we go from here, that means you are playing a part in where your society goes. And that's a fantastic freaking thing. That's power. That's real power. You can truly say later on to your grandchildren or whatever, yeah, I was part of that discussion. Wouldn't you want to say that? This has gone longer than I wanted it to, so I'm just going to end it here. Hope this is something that, got you guys thinking. I hope this is something that you guys found valuable. And, yeah. Catch you guys later.